Welcome to With One Accord, a brief time presented by the Houston Chamber Choir each Monday and Friday to join us together despite this temporary isolation, to be renewed and refreshed through the power of choral music. I'm April Harris, Manager of Operations, and I'm thrilled to host today's Education Spotlight. When you think of the word tradition, what's the first thought that comes to mind? The memory of attending a school homecoming game? The anticipation of visiting family for the holidays? Tradition connects us simultaneously to our past, present, and future, reinforcing and celebrating the shared values and experiences with those closest to us. In choir programs, the traditions you share with your fellow choir members are some of the most important you experience. These are the individuals you learn with and learn from daily, growing together both creatively and professionally. I recently had the opportunity to chat with choral directors Scott Bonasso and Brendan Emig, two educators continuing the decades-long tradition of choral excellence at Houston St. John's School. As the two directors of the upper school choral program, Scott and Brendan use tradition as a framework to strengthen the choir's commitment to important values like leadership and fellowship, and to encourage their students to continue progressing and evolving, whether that be in technique or character. Their students have life-changing experiences, achieving countless success here in Texas, while also receiving invitations to travel abroad and perform in front of international audiences all over the globe. Under Scott and Brendan's instruction, the student choirs that make up St. John's Upper School Choral Program, Chanteuse, Choral, and Cantorai, continue to grow exponentially. Their dedication to providing students with an elite understanding of choral music and tremendous opportunities in which to execute that understanding is without a doubt a shining beacon for the next generation of choral innovators. I wonder what new choral traditions and history are in store.
Today, I'm joined by two very special guests, Scott Bonasso and Brendan Emig, choral directors at St. John's School here in Houston. Scott and Brendan, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you about choral music education in private schools today. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Doing well.
Good. So let's just start the conversation off with a bit about your backgrounds. When were you first introduced to choral music? When did you realize you loved it? And when did that transition to a love of choral music education? Scott, if you wouldn't mind going first.
Okay, well, I didn't really discover choral music until I was in high school. I actually went to high school up in the Northeast in Northern Virginia. I was primarily a percussion guy growing up, and school percussion band, and also, you know, a drummer, rock drummer, jazz drummer. And when I got to high school, I was focused on soccer, really. I was a serious soccer player, but my soccer career ended my junior year of high school, and I had all this time on my plate, and I had always been interested in the school choir. We had a really good choir program at that high school, and I went and auditioned for the top choir and got in, and did 2 years of that top choir in high school. Just fell in love with choral music, and you know, the rest was history. I had thought about possibly majoring in music in college before doing choir, but once I had experienced choir for 2 years, I decided that was what I wanted to do, was choral music, and conducting in particular. I really was intrigued by the art of conducting. So my family relocated to Texas right as I was graduating high school, and Kent Hatterberg from Sam Houston State University contacted me when I was looking at programs in East Texas, and offered me a scholarship for choral music at Sam Houston, and that's where I went, and ended up just, it just got better and better. You know, the passion for choral music just increased. The intrigue of conducting and conducting choirs, and then eventually conducting orchestras too, was just, it was really fulfilling, and I never looked back. So after Sam Houston, I moved to the Houston area, and met Dr. Hausman and Dr. Weber at U of H, and eventually started a master's degree in choral conducting at U of H. And through Dr. Weber, found out that there was a job opening in 2001 at St. John's School because the great Janet Scarcella was retiring. And so I interviewed and got that job as I was finishing up my master's degree, and that's where I've been ever since. It's been 19 years now.
Beautiful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On a career at St. John's. And Brendan, same questions for you.
Okay, well,
Find that love for choral music.
Yeah, I'm more of a, I guess, childhood choir boy. I started in choir in middle school. I'm actually a product of the Houston public school system, Harris area Texas public schools, or whatever. So I went to we moved to Texas in 1994 when I started middle school, and joined the choir, joined the orchestra. I played cello, and just really enjoyed it. I'd always enjoyed singing. Back then I was still a soprano. And then went to high school at Clear Lake High School, and just, again, just loved choral music, loved singing. And decided to major in voice. My original goal was actually to be an opera singer and like in musicals and things like that. So I went to Sam Houston State, was recruited by Alan Hightower, and studied with him for 5 years. After that, I pursued a master's in voice from the Cincinnati Conservatory. And that actually is kind of where I found my niche in a way, because yes, I was still doing opera and classical oratorios, concertos, and things like that, and concerts. But I also learned at St. Peter and Chains Cathedral how to be a professional kind of chorus musician. And that's really helped my singing career. So I've been a member of chamber choir when I moved back to Houston, the Bach Society of Houston, Cantari Houston, and other choral ensembles around town. I'm a staff member of Palmer Episcopal. I got into teaching because after doing so many auditions and for opera and things like that, it didn't pan out. And I decided that bartending was no longer fun, and I'm going to try out teaching. So I tried it and absolutely fell in love with it. So after 6 years of teaching in public schools, Stephen Bedford, my predecessor, retired, and I found about the job and applied and got it, and been there for the last this is my 5th year going. So, yeah.
Congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.
Now, so you have 3 upper level choirs that you instruct. Would you mind going into detail about those 3 choirs?
Sure.
Brendan?
I'll start with mine since I only have the one. So I teach Les Chanteuses, which is the 9th and 10th grade treble choir, the girls' choir. We typically have between 25 to 40 students, depending on the year and interest. And they go after 10th grade with me, they go to the Choral, which is the larger mixed ensemble with Scott. I think we do really nice repertoire, because I think that in a way, sometimes your high school treble choir is the last time you really are in a treble choir, because you usually end up in a mixed choir somewhere, even if you do lifelong, it's all SATB. So it's kind of finding those things that are challenging, but still accessible to 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds. So.
Yeah, and as Brendan said, Les Chanteuses feeds into my mixed concert choir, which is called Choral. It's sort of an odd boy-girl combination in that group, because we have 9th through 12th grade boys, and 11th and 12th grade girls. And that's because, like with most programs, there are more girls than boys. So we can't split up the boys between upper and lower classmen like we can the girls, between Choral and Les Chanteuses. So that group, gosh, in the almost 20 years I've been there, it's fluctuated. Some years we've had in the 50s, and I remember one year we got up to 100 in that group. So it fluctuates, but I'd say a historical average is about 60 plus singers in that group. As I said, it's a large concert choir mixed, and we do primarily accompanied literature. We twice a year combine with our upper school strings program to do choral orchestral repertoire at Christmas, and then again in February for our choral orchestral festival concert. So very much a concert choir. From that group, we audition students from that group. The 11th and 12th grade students are eligible to be in a pull-out group, which is the top choir of the school cantori, which is actually a mispronunciation of cantori. I believe that's how it's actually pronounced, but everyone says cantori. And that is the top choir, select group, all juniors and seniors. And they sing exclusively a cappella literature, probably collegiate level type repertoire. They're a touring group, a competitive group. They're the one, that's the group that I take around to perform in public, Christmas caroling performances around the city, invitational concerts, competitions. And then every other summer, we do a concert tour of a foreign country. So we go abroad and do a 8 or 9 day concert tour. So they're very much high profile and a historically high level group. And again, I inherited this program from Janet Scarcella, who had really raised it to a quality level, and that we all still enjoy. Brendan, Stephen and I, and now Brendan and I are proud to carry on what's been a very quality tradition of choral singing at St. John's. Mm-hmm. And I have to give kudos to Brendan. My two choirs, Choral and Cantori, sound as good as they do, in large part because of the work that Brendan does with the 9th and 10th grade girls and Les Chanteuses before he sends them up to me. They get some excellent training from him, and it all works in sequence to have a 9th through 12th grade excellent choir program.
Brendan, so there are any special preparations that you take within your lessons to kind of prep them for that cantori?
I think it's maybe focus on literacy, music literacy, okay. Because we and just kind of building them up and gaining confidence. Like one of the interesting things in chorale, you have the 9th through 12th grade boys, so you have these young underclassmen who do have older leadership in the group. Whereas for me, it's more getting these girls ready to go and getting them, and they're all very capable. And it's just a matter of kind of building repertoire. We will occasionally do probably once a year an a cappella piece just to kind of get their feet wet into that thing. Of course, as all students do, they want to do all a cappella all the time. And then they realize, hey, this is, now you have to do it live. It's a little bit more challenging. So, but yeah, we work on that. We work on range, especially, and because Scott does do some pretty heavy stuff. So you got to get the sopranos up to those high Bs sometimes. But yeah, we work on that, and just mostly literacy and confidence more than anything is that they are absolutely able to get in there and to excel. So.
Yeah, because as juniors, those girls walk right into a position where they have to assume leadership right away. There's as juniors, they are the new women's section in the top group of the school, and the burden that carries with the repertoire that they have to learn, the pace that the group works, the a cappella. That all the repertoire is a cappella, and then all of a sudden they're leaders. They're the leaders, actually official leaders in chorale and cantori, section leaders, running sectionals, working with me, the director, to help run the program. So there's no, like Brendan said, the 9th through 12th grade boys in chorale, the 9th and 10th grade boys kind of get to see the older boys at work, leading the group, how to carry yourself in the two top groups, and the girls don't have that advantage. They come in as 11th graders and have to be ready to just hit the ground running, and Brendan does a great job of preparing them for that.
Now, I'm familiar with more public schools, so their TMEA, for example, they had a lot of auditions, a convention, different resources for students in public schools. Now, do private institutions have a similar association or unit or conferences that they're able to go to? Or do they also attend the TMEA conferences, like Allstate, for example?
Well, I'll speak to that because we've actually done both in my time at St. John's. When I first started at St. John's, we were still participating in TMEA, Allstate. We were one of a few private schools left in our region. At least I think there were 3 of us still, private schools still in that region. I think it was 23 at the time.
Wow.
What I found the most frustrating thing for me was the time commitment that was required of students who would take part in the all-state audition process. At St. John's and at a lot of private schools, there's a smaller student body than at the public counterpart high school, and so with fewer students, you have fewer students populating all of the regular programs that you have at a high school, both fine arts and sports and clubs. And so we have fewer students that are pulled in a lot of different directions. So they're very busy. Their schedules are already packed. And to try and add in, an audition process during the fall semester that includes 3 Saturdays, full Saturdays, driving to a campus far away to do live auditions. It's a lot to commit to because you have to look ahead in the schedule and see, well, I've got to black out these Saturdays, but that conflicts with this game or this club or this trip or, so by the time we got to the first round of auditioning in the fall, I had started with 30 kids saying they were interested in doing it, but once they looked at their schedules, by the time we went to district in the fall in September, I was bringing like maybe 7 or 8 kids. So the time commitment was starting to affect how many kids that we could actually get. We had the talent, we had the kids who could go far in the process. The singing talent was there, but unfortunately it just didn't jive with their schedules for the most part. So the organization TPSMEA is I guess you would call it the private school counterpart to TMEA. It's Texas Private School Music Educators Association. And it also has an all-state choir. It actually has 4 all-state ensembles: a choir, a wind ensemble, a jazz band, and orchestra, string orchestra. And that organization has been getting bigger over in the time that I've been at St. John's, and about 10 years into my tenure at St. John's, it had really grown to a large size, and most of the private schools had switched over to that organization from TMEA. I believe when the year we switched, St. John's was actually the last private school in our region at TMEA. The concern with moving to TPSMEA had always been quality. We wanted our kids to have the same quality experience that they would have in the TMEA region and all state choirs, and the competitiveness too. We wanted the bar to be high enough that the singers had to really work hard and to compete. So that I felt by the time we moved over to TPSMEA that that organization had really reached a level that was satisfactory in those regards. So what works for TPSMEA for us better is simply a time scheduling issue. Those auditions are done by recording. Students record their own auditions. They don't do live in-person auditions. And so there's lots more flexibility as to when the students can make those recordings in the fall. And we learn 2 pieces, not 2 pieces per round, but they learn 2 the all-state pieces for the audition process. And then they make the recording, and then they send out the recording, and the recording makes it through various levels of judging before it either makes the region choir and then goes on possibly to make the all-state choir. But the student isn't required to be there. So the student makes the recording, learns the music, makes the recording, sends it in, and then is not required to be anywhere on any weekends in the fall. And it just makes the the scheduling issue just works itself out. And I think, like I said, in a lot of private schools, they were having the same issue with kids that just couldn't commit to the TMEA audition process. So this allows, those 30 kids that I said had wanted to audition before, we've got all 30 auditioning now because they're absolutely able to. And the organization continues to grow in the time we've been doing it. And the All-State Choir gets a lot of the same clinicians that the TMEA All-State Choir gets. We often have back-to-back years where the clinician will go from conducting the TMEA All-State Choir and then come to us the next year. And we've always gotten high praise from the clinicians. It's a really excellent group, and our students have found the experience to be very rewarding.
Nice. It's wonderful. And you mentioned earlier that your students are worldly travelers. What could you tell me a little bit about those experiences of traveling abroad at such a young age as well, and how beneficial that is?
Sure. The last trip we did, Brendan went with us. Brendan and then Stephen before him always assists on the Cantori trip. So the traveling abroad tradition goes back to before my time at St. John's. It was Janet Scarcella and her friend and colleague Judy McEnany at Lamar High School, which is next door to St. John's, and it also has a fine choir program. Well, they would combine their two top a cappella groups every other summer and do a trip abroad. And so it was called the St. John's Lamar Chamber Choir. And I think they would have anywhere from half of each group participate to combine to make a full choir, sometimes more. So that's where that tradition was born. When the year that I took over from Janet at St. John's, Lamar also had a new choir director. And so he and I were aware of the traveling tradition in the summer. That first year was a trip year. And he and I combined the two groups to do a trip. We did a concert tour of Canada. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. All the kids had a wonderful experience. We sang at some real high-profile venues. I think the highlight of that trip was giving a concert at the Basilica where Celine Dion was married. So we and it was a beautiful time of year to be in Canada. It wasn't quite abroad as in overseas, but it was still on the continent. But the foreign experiences were there, and what really struck me about that trip was how rich the musical experiences were, the singing for foreign audiences, and then communing with the audiences afterwards and talking and sharing. It just the opportunity to fellowship with foreign audiences through the universal language of music, which is very special. And I think everyone realized that. So a couple of years later, Lamar got a new choir director, and they decided to sort of go their own way with their traveling activities. And so that was when we took the travel abroad program and made it a St. John's only thing. My concern was that we weren't going to get enough kids to sign up for the trip that second time to make a choir to carry out the concert tour part of the trip. But we did. I think that first year that it was St. John's only, all but one student signed up. So we had pretty much the whole Cantori And that year we went to Austria. And you guys know that obviously the musical history involved with that trip was very special. And the trip program just started to sort of gain momentum. You know, the students from that trip would talk it up. And so that, you know, 2 years down the road, the rising cantori be like, okay, where are we going? Where are we touring this year? So it started to catch fire. And, you know, at St. John's, traditions catch on pretty quickly. You do something twice and it's a dyed in the wool tradition. So the St. John's Cantori travel abroad program, or the concert tour abroad program every other year, really took off. And it's, you know, 10 tours later, you know, we're still doing it. We were supposed to do a tour of, Brendan, where were we going? Switzerland?
In Switzerland and southern Germany.
In southern Germany this past spring, this past June, but unfortunately that trip got canceled due to the virus. So looking into the future, we still plan to try and involve concert tours abroad in the curriculum and the program, but it might look a little different in the years to come, possibly not taking place over the summer, but maybe in the school year proper. But the intent is to still travel, because it's had a really wonderful, motivating and inspiring effect on the kids in our program. It gives all of the kids in our program sort of something to work for, a reason to work hard for Brendan, and then for me to try and get into the select group, because they know they'll have the opportunity to travel. Cantori's performed at some of the world's greatest venues. We work with Rick Dillard and American Classic Tours, and over time you build up equity, performing equity, and word of mouth, and they start to, as they shop you around to different performance venues, you have publicity materials and audition materials that sort of speak for themselves. And we've sung at St. Peter's Basilica, Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and we've gone to South America, and it's just, you name it, we've been there, and we've given some pretty high profile concerts, and it's just had a very motivating effect on the whole program and everybody.
If I could just add in one of the really cool things to see, because I was there as I guess like a faculty chaperone in a way, but to see, a lot of times you have students that they perform maybe 1 or 2 concerts on the same repertoire, but to see them go from their preview concert here in Houston to the Nordic countries, in Sweden and where else did we go? Norway, Sweden, and Finland. Yeah. And they got to perform these pieces, 6 to 8, 10 times, and to see just how tight those performances got each time. They were better and better because they're sitting there living it the whole time. It's just a really remarkable experience for the young musicians.
Yeah, we get, for those concert tours, school ends and Cantori keeps rehearsing. I mean, I think we do 20 hours of rehearsal on that repertoire before we actually take it on tour. So it's really tight by the time we take it overseas. And like Brendan said, it's neat for high school singers to get that far in a rehearsal process with repertoire and a performance process to reach that level of mastery of repertoire, and then on top of that to share that with foreign audiences. It's really special, and it's not probably not an experience that every high school singer gets in their high school choral career.
So, Brendan, you are a former member of Houston Chamber Choir. You joined us for 1 year. I believe it was our 2016-2017 season.
Okay, that could be it. It was either 15, 16, 16, 17, one of the two.
So you had the pleasure of actually performing in our annual Invitational concert, Hear the Future. Could you tell me a bit about your experience as a professional singer participating in that concert, along with the students and hearing them perform and also performing with them?
Yeah, so it was, it was just, I was like, oh, what's this concert on the calendar? I had really no idea about it. And
Right.
we show up, and because as a professional choir, you do have the whole binder full of repertoire, and we get there to perform, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I love the idea of vertical alignment in schools, and it's one of the things that really drew me to St. John's is that we have K through 12 students literally funneling through the same building, and it's going through the same programs, and to see and to perform with, to see these youngsters, all the, elementary all the way to high school level musicians, and just to see that growth in all of these, every single program that's program as in school that's picked for the Hear the Future concerts are exceptional. They can perform, at any convention. But then to get on stage with them as professionals, where we have, folks in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 20s, whatever, to really, I think it really means something to the students to see, like, hey, you don't have to stop after high school. There's more. You can keep going. You can keep going. Look how much better you get and how much better the repertoire gets, and you get paid for it sometimes. So, which is pretty cool. So I really love that experience, just to see these students be on there. And then it's just something really human about being on stage with so many multi-generational, multidisciplinary students and musicians together all in one place. It's really cool. It's one of those things, it's in a way a little cheesy, but you go back to your high school and see a concert, and sometimes they do a big song and they invite all the former members to get up on stage and sing it with them. It's just like, it's one of those just warm, fuzzy feelings that was just really, really neat. And I truly enjoyed it. Yeah.
And St. John's School in general has had numerous appearances at Hear the Future. The cantor was actually the first high school performer invited ever to a Hear the Future concert. And I know that was probably a year or two before you started at St. John's, Scott, but you have attended numerous concerts yourself and similar invitational concerts like Hear the Future. Could you tell me a bit about the preparation and the performance that students undergo, your students would undergo for those types of events?
I like you said, I actually haven't participated as a director, but in the actual performance, but as a spectator in the audience for other St. John's choirs as they've participated. The first time it was Les Chanteuses under the direction of Stephen Bedford, Brendan's predecessor, and then our 4th and 5th grade elementary choir, St. John's Singers, performed under the direction of Audra Parrish and Laura Bowman, all wonderful choral directors. And I couldn't have been more proud to attend as one of the team of directors at St. John's and watch the quality performances put on by our other groups. As Brendan said, we're a K through 12 school, and our choral program is 4th through 12th grade, with 6 ensembles, and we are all very much a team. And one of our group's success reflects on all of us. We couldn't, I wouldn't enjoy excellent singers in the high school without the quality instruction that we get from our lower school choir directors and our middle school choir directors, Brendan and I. I didn't get to see much of the preparation process. I know it happens in the spring. So the repertoire for the year is that they pick from for the year for that concert is already rehearsed somewhat, but I know they have extra rehearsals because they want it to be very polished because it's such a high profile event and an esteemed event. But what's always struck me about the Hear the Future concert is the quality of music making, the quality of choral music making in our community. The Houston community. When we do some competitions that we take part in, we, as in me and my choirs and Brendan and Les Chanteuses, involve the entire state. And Texas is known as a state for having an excellent music education system in its school system, both public and private. But here the future is very much a Houston thing, or at least the East Texas area thing. And so to see the high level of quality performances, choral music that are taking place in our neck of the woods is inspiring. It makes me proud to be a part of this community in Houston, teaching choral music. And what another thing I like about Here the Future is that it's multi grade level, multi age level. So we see elementary choirs and middle school choirs and then high school choirs. And it just shows to me that choral music education in East Texas is firing on all cylinders, as it has historically done, but just it's affirming every year to go see our wonderful colleagues doing this great work with their choirs of all ages. And I leave inspired. I leave that concert motivated to do even better work with my students, you know. So it's every time I get to go to that concert, it's a highlight of my year, particularly when I get to sit in the audience and be proud of another St. John's ensemble that's taking part in it.
Absolutely. And this upcoming school year, educators are going to have to take a lot of careful steps in consideration when planning what their students are going to encounter. I'm wondering if you could briefly discuss some of the practices that you've already tried out. For example, I know that you've done a virtual choir, and you, as well as Brendan, you've kind of combined to create that project. And I know that that's difficult to pull off. I'm wondering if you can just tell me a little bit more about that.
Brendan, why don't you go ahead, because you were more hands-on with that in the spring.
Okay, so I think as educators, period, you know, we're this coming school year, we're going to have to be flexible and have a lot of plans in place. You know, you have to have your best case scenario plan and your worst case scenario plan and everything in between. So yes, we did work in spring when the lockdown started. We did work on some virtual choir performances. We had some that were student driven, and then one I did with Les Chanteurs just because I wanted to learn the technology myself. And so it worked. It is, as every YouTube video says, it is a long process to get it done. But it is something that it's achievable, and it's something that I think will be around in some part, you know, this coming year for many of us. So I think that it's good to kind of dive in and at least explore that possibility. Rehearsals and things like that in the coming school year, I know we like many schools are starting virtually, and we're planning to do Zoom ensembles to start with. Scott and I have talked a little bit about that, and again, we've kind of planned what that's going to look like. And there's really there's no way to really have a rehearsal on Zoom where everyone can sing, you know. So it's going to be a lot of hopefully student accountability and practice, and us checking on their practice. Is kind of where, again, in hopes, in preparation for a concert in the future, or whether that be live or virtual. So, yeah.
And Scott, how are you preparing? What's next?
As Brendan said, he and I have talked. We've got various ideas for how to start remotely with choir this fall. The way I'm sort of looking at it, I was actually working on a syllabus the other day. I'm referring to the various projects my choirs are going to be doing remotely as tracks, like instructional tracks. And that's sort of how Brendan and I thought of them. Well, we can do this, and we can do this, and we can do this. And so now we've got sort of multiple tracks going that we can have projects that the students can work on, that we can guide them through in the remote learning phase, because as Brendan said, it's really not feasible to do a live choir, synchronous choir rehearsal on Zoom. So a virtual choir is one of the instructional tracks. we're looking at a new app, actually, as I'm sure most of the choir directors have seen the advertisement for the Choir Creator app, which is supposed to make the whole virtual choir process easier on the director and the students. We are looking at having our students begin to prepare all-state repertoire, audition repertoire on their own with guided practice on Zoom. That's usually an optional thing for choir students, but we're thinking about having every student at least work on the repertoire to as if they're working towards making an audition recording when we come back. Just because the process of individually learning that repertoire and preparing yourself to make a solo recording is good, a good educational process for any singer, for especially high school singer. And then you know, we plan to have a fall concert at some point this fall, whether it's virtual or in person. And then beyond that, we're looking towards Christmas time and doing some sort of performance. We don't know what those are going to look like, but we do know that the choir is going to perform some kind of repertoire. So we need to get them started on their fall concert and Christmas repertoire. So that's all. Those are all things that we can do online. There's also sight reading practice that we can guide them through in our Zoom sessions. So we've been looking at programs that facilitate individual student practice, software that we can use to sort of database repertoire and practice tracks and sound files, and gather students there and issue assignments, rehearsal assignments, and sort of gauge how long a student hooks into the software and how long they're rehearsing, and sort of monitor how our students are all moving forward on learning all this various repertoire. So we want to be as productive as we can, and you know, and hopeful that will dovetail nicely into in-person teaching when we resume that eventually this fall. So it's much better than doing nothing. You know, engaging the students, and as Brendan said, the trying to instill in students the sense of individual responsibility to their choir, a sense that being a choir member is not relegated to just what you do in the choir rehearsal room, but what you do outside of the room to prepare is an important tenet that we want to teach our students. In Cantori, the Cantori students regularly have homework. They're expected to study their music in between rehearsals. They have specific homework goals of music that they have to learn and then are tested on it. So they very much are in the habit of leaving the choir room and learning music on their own to prepare for the next rehearsal. So this is an opportunity, I think, to get all students, 9th through 12th grade, sort of in the practice of doing that kind of individual practice outside of the in-person choir rehearsals. So it could be a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm imagining it also helps if they're able to keep up with their lessons and they're able to still hold on to the fact that they are a part of this choir. They're a part of a choir. They're an individual within a group. I'm sure that that's kind of comforting to know that I'm doing this because I want to sing again with the people that I've been singing with for these so many years. Some in some cases since the lower level choir. So I think that's absolutely amazing and beautiful, and I can't wait to see what else comes from St. John's beautiful choirs.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
April, that's a great point. Something I noticed when we did the virtual choir projects this past spring was how the students just they volunteered to do it. They wanted to do it. There was no pulling them along, and they were hungry to do it.
Yeah.
And the performances they made, you know, the videos they made in their own homes to send in, were, you could see the expression on their faces, the emotion on their faces. They were so dialed in. It was really neat. And April, I think that speaks to your point about how the kids are, they're just hungry to maintain that sense of connection with their choir, with their friends, with their co-singers, with the director, and to be part of that group and to just sing. They want to sing.
Absolutely.
I think they're chomping at the bit to do that. And you know, Brendan and I were talking the other day, and you know, I have a tendency to maybe start to have dark thoughts about, oh, it's not going to work, and you know, it's not going to be the same, and this year is going to be sort of a dip in morale because of the remote learning and versus in person. And Brendan said, you know, on the contrary, this might be our finest year yet. You know, and I think the kids are so hungry to sing that when we finally sort of are, the gates are open and we're allowed to be back together in person singing again, we're going to have an explosion of attendance, and new students are going to come out, and the choirs are going to be better than ever, and our choir program will be stronger than ever. So, and the more I think about it, the more I agree with him. So,
I think Brendan's on to something.
I do too.
we gotta sing. Everybody's gotta sing. I mean,
Well, Scott, Brendan, thank you so much for this time to chat. I really, truly appreciate it.
Thank you, April.
yes, thank you for having us.
Special thanks to the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs and Houston Arts Alliance for their consistent support. To our phenomenal guests, Scott, Brendan, and the wonderful students in St. John's School's upper level choirs. And to you, our listeners, for tuning in. And now, please enjoy a medley of Bloom, composed by Philip Sylvie, and Kyrie from Mass for double choir, composed by Joseph Reinberger, performed by the talented St. John's School Les Chanteuses and Cantorai. The Houston Chamber Choirs with One Accord is your one-stop shop for choral joy. If you enjoyed this content, help us to continue our mission to grow the esteem and appreciation of choral music by sharing, reviewing, and subscribing to our content. As a 501c3 nonprofit organization, support from listeners like you allows us to continue creating new and exciting content. For more information about us and how you can support our work, visit HoustonChamberChoir.org/give.